we have a very, again, an inspiration who's going to be talking and coming here on the stage. He talks to us about go above and beyond, the making of an entrepreneur. In fact, in these difficult times, it is necessary that we develop an entrepreneurial mindset. We are ready to play on skinny branches, ready to take risk, ready to form organizations. So if you are a small broker, how do you scale up? How do you build a team? How do you take people together? We are going to be learning a lot from Dr. Reddy, who's a Padma Shri awardee. He talks to us about the art of creating strong teams and scaling up organization. Go above and beyond, the making of an entrepreneur. That's the topic. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in inviting our keynote speaker, Mr. B.V.Mohan Reddy, the former chairman of NASSCOM, the chairman board of governors IIT Hyderabad. His story itself stands very inspirational. The son of a police officer, the grandson of a farmer, B.V.Mohan Reddy is the first generation entrepreneur. He founded SIANT in 1991 when entrepreneurship was not even born as such, I think. It's a buzzword today. SIANT began as a team of 4 engineers working from home. Today, it contributes more than $3 billion in cumulative exports from India to Fortune 100 companies. He has created direct employment for about 15,000 engineering professionals in 47 locations across 21 countries. And Dr. Reddy has firmly placed India on the global map for leading-edge engineering, research and development. What's his secret mantra? I'm sure he's going to be sharing with us. We look forward again to be inspired and motivated by him. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. B.V.R. Reddy.
I had the opportunity of listening to 2 speakers who spoke ahead of me, 2 inspiring speeches, Asif Iqbal and Sujata Burla. I think great lessons to learn. Great lessons to learn for us to all promote more amount of inclusiveness in our society. My story couldn't be as inspiring as they could be, but all the same, let me talk to you for next, I was told I could speak for like 25 or 30 minutes. I'll try to be as quick as I can. And I just want to make sure that my clock works, so that I don't overstrip. Yeah. So I'll do a couple of things, I guess, at this point of time. I'll go and beyond the norm for an entrepreneurship, for an entrepreneur. That's my first part. And entrepreneurship provides enormous amount of opportunities at this point of time in times of change. So I'll talk about change and how does Realtors get to use this change is the second part of my presentation. Very honestly, when your past chairman, Sridhar Reddy, came and saw me and requested me to speak at this event, I did not know what Realtors meant. But of course, you have a source of finding every piece of information in the world. So as soon as he left my office, I did one thing. And what was that? I Googled. And I found the answer. And the answer was Realtors, and was an impressive answer I found. The National Association of Realtors was a body which stood for efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency. And they stood very high on ethics. So that being very dear to me, I thought I'll start my presentation starting off with, can I get the slides up, please? Oh, you got them up. Thank you. With my first slide. To me, any business, whether it is Realtors, or it is like my engineering business, or it is the IT-enabled services business, or it can be brick and mortar business. The foundation for any company, for a business to be successful, are its values. The way in which we call them in our company, we call them as values first, F-I-R-S-T. The acronym that we play for fairness, integrity, respect, sincerity, and transparency. That to me is the foundation. And on top of that foundation, I believe there are 4 pillars of strength which makes organization successful. And I keep saying the CEO stands on top of that particular stool which has got those 4 pillars. And all of you understand, even one of the 4 pillars becomes weak, the consequences are disastrous. You fall apart. So the result is the ability to be equitable to all the 4 stakeholders is what makes organizations successful. And ability to do that equity to all the people is to make sure you run an ethical business. We have seen people prospering without ethics in short term. I've done enough research. Longer term, very rarely have we found an example which says, people could succeed. So the alignment I have with Realtors is my values. We keep saying in the company too, the value of an individual is sum total of the values that they have. And the other point I wanted to make was that many of us recognize that for a business to be successful, there are 4 stakeholders, I put them up there. 3 of them are very easily recognizable. Who are they? My investor, my customer, my employees. Not many of us recognize the society is equally important for our success. So you got to make sure that you can also be equitable to the society to ensure that you are successful. So when Sridhar Reddy came, he said, look, talk about entrepreneurship. So if you go back again and Google this word called entrepreneur, or you probably go and look at the Oxford English Dictionary on what entrepreneur means, it gives you a very simple explanation. It says it's an idea, somebody has an idea, creates a business for profit. The 3 words the key buzzwords you'll pick up: idea, business, profit. But to build a business, to me, these are not good enough. Then you go back and do a little more research. You can go and ask people what they think about. And the other words that come out is passion, commitment, hard work, vision, strategy, and so on and so forth. So there are just not those 3 things called an idea, a business, and profit makes an entrepreneur. It's much beyond. I'm here to share with you about 4 or 5 of the lessons I learned before I get to the changing world. So what did I learn to be a sustainable company? The first and the foremost is that you need to have a challenge which is not for your street, not for your city, it has to be for global. You have to identify a problem which is real, a problem for which you will get a distinctively different solution. We identified that. And that's what I always tell people. We also dabble around quite a bit with the startup ecosystem right now. And we keep saying, please look for a real problem. Look for a solution which will keep you apart for just at least for 18 months. Thereafter, by 18 months, you will definitely find one more solution which will keep you apart for under 18 months. So therefore, the first lesson that the entrepreneur should learn to be sustainable is that you need to have an identifiable opportunity which is large. As I said, it can't be for the street, it can't be for the city, it has to be for the global marketplace. The second lesson that we learned is that you constantly need to be different from others. We started this company that I found in 1992, which is about 27 years now. And in the 27 years, it morphed itself into about 4 different versions. There's a 4.0, which is not visible on the screen. So we now call it as Signed 4.0. Digitization of maps. Thereafter, we're providing just world-class engineering services. Thereafter, we said we'll provide engineering solutions. But now, we provide to customers end-to-end solutions, products to customers globally. So therefore, the second lesson, if you want to be a sustainable business, is that you can't stand still and say, I have a eureka moment, and I got an idea, and that idea will take me forever. You need to constantly reinvent yourself. Let me move on to the third one. How do you scale this business? It's a very simple terms and easy to remember for most of you. You use computers and especially PowerPoint presentations. Is a framework, we call it as the dot PPT strategy. The dot is in the center of the triangle, which is the customer, and the three edges of the triangle are the PPTs. PPT is not a PowerPoint presentation. The PPT for me is the first P is people, the second P is processes, and the third T as it comes, it has got three T's hidden one behind the other. It's technology, tools, and training. The first one about the customer, we are paranoid about customers. And that's what I think I want to leave behind you with you too. Please be paranoid about your customer. Once you get a customer, he or she should not leave you. How do you do that? You can't hold him on, hold her on. The only way is you create value for the customer. That's when the customer has enormous amount of loyalty to you. And the way in which we do that, it can't be for an organization of our size. We can't be saying there's just one customer who looks after everything for us. What we do is that we do this customer satisfaction 3 times over. One is called a transactional MFA, market feedback analysis as it's called, an engineer to engineer. As soon as a piece of work gets done, we want to know how good was the work. The second time, on a quarterly basis, manager to manager, we get this work done to say we'd like to hear from them as to how the work was, because engineer would have a bias because he has to live with this guy irrespective of the type of work. Managers, we think, is less biased. But more interestingly, every year, an independent organization like Feedback Ventures does it for us for the last 6 years, I believe now, goes back to we have about 300 active customers. There are 1,500 active touch points. But they have to touch at least 1,000 touch points to get us a feedback to say what the customer thought about us in terms of quality, in terms of cost, in terms of on-time delivery, in terms of innovation, in terms of alternative solutions, and so on and so forth. So the result is, this is something important. The customer, paranoid about customer, is a key driver to become sustainable in terms of businesses. Trust me, we exited from customers. We never allowed a customer to exit from us. That's the type of focus we have on customers. Then, who builds companies? Companies have brick and mortar. Inside the brick and mortar, of course, we have people. So people make the difference. So an ability of a company to recruit, retain, reward, retrain makes the differentiation on sustainability. So is the case, if you want to scale a company, you can't scale it by just saying, I just employ more people. The key to scaling is ability to bring in standard processes. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these standards called ISO 9000, CMMI, Level 5 in software, all these. But we went much beyond that. We created our own process-enabled framework called the BEST. Business Excellence Standards, it's called. And what do we do with our BEST framework is making sure that we measure quality, which is coming back from the customers. We measure customer satisfaction, and equally important is the associate satisfaction. We don't call our engineers employees, we call them as associates. So it's ASAT, CSAT, and QSAT. Quality satisfaction, associate satisfaction, and our customer satisfaction. So a combination of that is the process that comes in. And then you need to deploy the right level of technology. I'll spend a little more time on technology as we move forward, even on people. So therefore, let me briefly say that technology is changing and you got to keep pace with it. Technology becomes the enabler at this point of time to make sure that you are a lot more competitive compared to your other peers. And also equally important is the fact that today, I'm sure you're hearing this word called automation and so on and so forth. That's nothing but tools. If a repetitive work comes by, that can now easily be done using tools, which are computer tools. So the ability to deploy tools, and after that, we have also a fairly serious challenge in this country, the type of skills that you find with fresh engineers who come in. I've done fairly large amount of work. I have submitted a report to Government of India. I chaired that committee for government, so I can tell you with confidence, it is certainly of a concern to us. So therefore, what we do, at least for now, we've put a lot of strategies in place for the government, but for now, or for the last 20 years, what we've been doing is we train our people. So therefore, what comes back to you also is if you want to build a sustainable business, please focus on people, processes, tools, technology, and training. Let me move on. I think that the world that we live is all about innovation. Innovation and invention, you have to distinguish them from each other. Innovation is an existing set of ideas, existing set of technologies, but you now bring about a new service offering to make sure you have that distinctive edge. You innovate compared to others. There is a myth. People believe all innovators are born as innovators. They all have very strong right brain. They're creative in mind. I don't think that's true. Our belief is no. We can make sure that nurture can overtake nature as far as innovation is concerned. Because there are other components of innovation as opposed to just the idea in making sure those ideas can be emanated by the ecosystem that you have. So what do we make sure happen with our people? They question status quo. They certainly go ahead and experiment their ideas. They thereafter socialize those ideas. And finally, that they say even failure is not seen down. A combination of these four factors which makes it into a culture makes people to innovate more. So therefore, to us, innovation is not cognitive. Innovation is behavioral. It's a combination of both of them because cognitive is God's creation, whereas behavioral is ecosystem creation. And that's what we have done in terms of making sure that constant innovation within the company will make sure that we are ahead of the curve. We also believe, and I'm sure all of you have to recognize that too, we live in a world which is called open innovation at this point of time, which is not, innovation is not limited to just a few people, it is all around the world. So we should have the ability to ensure that you can source the innovation from outside. So we have a number of initiatives which say corporate venture fund, new business accelerators, and so on and so forth. So therefore, that's the other lesson I learned as a entrepreneur to build a sustainable business. Go back to people again. We saw two challenging people this morning. We heard from them very inspiring stories. And our belief is we need to definitely ensure diversity and inclusiveness becomes a part and parcel of an organization. We recruit, there are years we've recruited even 1,500 people in a single year. But I would never sign off on a recruitment requisition unless we saw 30% of people as women. But it comes down to about 20%, and that's the, as we move up the hierarchy. But I think that is something extremely important for all of us to ensure that we have companies which are sustainable. I keep saying, unless we get to this number called 50-50, you can never find a society, a nation, a sect of people can never be successful. So we have put in a fairly large amount of effort in developing our in-house leadership. That's important too because after all, companies grow, you can't be doing everything. All of us have the same 24 hours. So the result is you have to find succession in place, which means development has to happen with leaders. And of course, in the world that we live, we do a fairly large amount of learning. Let me move on a little faster. I'm getting slow. And then I talked about the fourth pillar, which is society. So therefore, if you want to build sustainable business, I keep saying that you have to grow with responsibility. We do a fairly large amount of work on CSR much before the CSR norm came in, the 2% spend that is there. And what is it at this point of time? we have about 26 schools under our management in this neighborhood. We do about 56 other schools which are got the digital classrooms and digital literacy capability within them. We impact about 20,000 children. So unless you go back and work back into the society, sustainability again becomes a challenge. So what did I do in the last 27 years? At the end of it is here is what the company looks like. It does product engineering, we do process engineering, we do network operations, design-led manufacture, and also we have a small piece of business called geospatial. The story was, I started as the anchor said, 4 engineers in my modest home on my dining table. That was the story. Found an idea, we put all these sustainable, scalable models into play to bring the company to last year we were about 4,500 crores of revenue. We're at about 600 crores of operating margin. We employ about 15,000 people. We're also a publicly traded company. We rewarded our investors extremely well. We took the company public in 1997. A lakh of rupees invested in 1997. In 20 years thereafter became 397 lakhs. It was a 397x return we gave to our investors. So let me move on. So what brought us here will not take us to the next step. So what is happening to the world at this point of time, if you look at it, is that there's an enormous amount of change that is happening. Change being driven by a number of factors. The first and the foremost is we see a rise of emerging economies. Currently, we have 400 of the Fortune 500 companies located in North America and Europe, whereas 10 years from now, our belief is 400 of them will be located in Asia, Pacific, Australia, Japan, and only the other 100 will be left behind. That's a big change that's happening. The second change we also see is this aging population, especially in Europe. And the third one, which I'll probably spend a little more time, is the power of disruptive technologies. We're talking about technologies, but these are disruptive because they disrupt the existing industry. And finally, there are 2 other things which are sort of conflicting with each other. The first one is we see on one side an integrating world. We keep talking about globalization on one part. But the other side, in the recent past, especially last 3 years or so, we have also seen sizable amount of raise in geopolitics. Example being Trump or the trade wars that go on between the United States and China. Or you saw the Brexit at this point of time. Or for that matter, closer to home, I should be honest about it, even Make in India initiative is actually localization more than globalization. So these are some very complex issues which are bothering. But within this, I won't have time to spend on all the complex issues. Let me just pick on one thing called technology at this point of time. And I'm sure you must have heard about this word called 4th Industrial Revolution. I keep saying that, change and mankind are synonymous of each other. You saw the Steel Age, the Stone Age, the Steel Age, and then the first Industrial Revolution when steam came into existence. The second Industrial Revolution, which automobile came into existence. The third one was more to do with the ICT technologies. But we are now in the 4th Industrial Revolution, where what we keep saying is the cyber world is meeting the physical world. It's not any longer it's zeros and ones. It is people can also converse with the same zeros and ones with the same amount of pace. And so as a result of this 4.0, you saw why is this 4.0 becoming so powerful is here are these factors. The first one we keep calling as the 4 accelerators which have made the difference to the industry 4.0. The first is computers are becoming cheaper, smaller, faster. There's no end to this. First time in my life, I saw a computer way back in 1974 when I was a student at IIT Kanpur. The best of computing centers that we had in India was at IIT Kanpur. And how big was the computing center? It occupied this whole auditorium as we sit here. That's the size of the computing that was there. And as a student, I went there and I saw this nice water fountain which used to be in front of the computer center. Water used to dance up and down. Dumb people like me thought, what a marvel of an architecture this was, water and the building behind. But actually, the water fountain was intended for cooling the computer system. And what was the power of that computer was less than what you have in your hand or in your bags. So that's the amount of change we have seen with computers. They become smaller, they become powerful. That machine at that point in time was a $12 million machine. What is this like? This is a $500 product. So computing is one thing which is helping us. The second one is, which is interesting, and I wanted to spend a few minutes on this particular slide, is connectivity. I belong to a generation where if you want to get a phone, you had to wait for about 7 to 9 years. This was even true in the 1970s. After you went and paid money, you had several schemes. Even if you paid one, you'd take 18 months. We used to give offers to our employees which said, look, one of the perquisites that they would get is a phone at home. People, our foreign friends used to say, what is this rubbish like? Why do you get to a phone at home? Because that was the biggest luxury people had. What is it today? 7 billion people in the world, 5 billion of them already have a phone with them. I believe there are 7 billion phones, 3 billion of them are smartphones. So therefore, people are communicating with each other. When you communicate with each other, it's a network. And the way in which we keep saying the power of a network is a square of number of nodes on them. So just leave this number of 5 billion people for a minute. But more interestingly, there are 15 billion things also on the same network. They're also communicating. You can communicate with your freezer, your fridge, your car. You can sit here and say, I can open my car. Actually, a Tesla car, I can stand here and get it parked in the slot that's available next to it. So we are not communicating with people any longer, or we continue to, sorry, I'll take that back. We're continuing to communicate with people, but more interestingly with things too. So now the network power is at 20 billion times square. And a third one, which is an interesting one, is this ugly looking things called sensors came into existence of the recent past. God gave us 5 senses. Our ability to feel, our ability to hear, our ability to see, our ability to smell, and our ability to taste. All these 5 senses now the computers can do equally well as the human being does. A good example is that on sound, if you recall, at least I recall my younger days, when the pump in the house used to not pump water to the overhead tank. And so I used to call a mechanic. Mechanic used to come, switch on the pump, and then say, sir, isme bearing gaya hua hai. So how did he recognize without doing anything? He just heard the sound. He synthesized the sound and brain processed it thereafter. Precisely that happens now in a fraction of a second using computers. So that is what the sensors have done. They've done something more astounding. They're creating more amount of data. Data which is now not any longer in kilobytes, megabytes, teraflops, and so on and so forth. That amazing data leads you to the fourth one. You can now do algorithms on top of it to ensure that it's not, if you look at the computers, there were one point of time, they were intended for information systems. It was called MIS, Management Information Systems. IS department, Information System Department. They're no longer that anymore. Technology today allows you to take real-time decision making. And the computer does. That's what AI does for us. So technology is at its best. Sorry, I am a little carried away with my technology pitch. But what does it mean thereafter? It's creating a world which is called the VUCA world. Volatile, complex, ambiguous, did I get it? No. Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. And what does it mean? There are new technologies which have come in. AI, robotics, 3D printing, wearables, drones, and virtual reality. I can talk about them till the cows come home. I don't have time. But the interesting thing that we are finding is that this time about, this technology impacts every possible industry. At one point of time, if you look at technology or information technology more specifically, was impacting only a few industries, few services. You can name the industry, whether it's agriculture, it's logistics, it's healthcare. I can give you innumerable number of examples how technology has enormous amount of impact. We can have a patient sitting in a remote village in Mahbubnagar district, but then his ECG comes into Hyderabad, and then ECG comes in also with the preliminary findings which are being done by an AI algorithm which is running behind. So today you look at a remote, and then the doctor can intervene thereafter. With 5G technologies that will come in, with a latency which is less than 1 millisecond, we will find that even surgeries can be done online. Currently, it's not because of the lag that we have, but once that lag problem gets solved with 5G, we'll even do that. So therefore, the opportunities are plenty. Enormity is what it is. Challenges are plenty, but along with the challenges, you get opportunities. Here is what I have as my last but one slide, which talks about what is technology for you. It comes into a number of ways for realtors. You look at technology which are there for surveying at this point of time. What was surveying being done was chain surveys. People used to use chain, go and measure the inputs. Thereafter, they said, no, not necessarily true. We can do aerial photography. Then they said, we do satellite imagery. What is it now? You can fly a drone. And actually, if you recall the first picture that we saw on the my presentation, this actually is one of our facilities. We have 4 of them in Hyderabad. This is one of our facilities in Manikonda. This is all done using digital technology, flying drones. And this is all digital. It's not just photographs that we have taken. So the result is even the realtors at this point of time can use these technologies like drones to make sure that you get more amount of surveying power. As a result of it, what you're selling is more precision, and it has a lot more amount of accuracy with it. And then after that, in terms of executing the projects, you can do planning and design using 3D design work. Today, people are doing 3D printing. That's basically additive manufacturing to put a number of things in place right at the facility itself. The end result is the amount of time to execute project has become shorter. Your ability to sell your projects to your customers become much, much faster. We have same thing true with the bill of material. We're using drones for carrying material from one place to the other. Actually, there are drones which are now carrying 50 tons of weight. You can get to that fixed-wing aircraft from, we have a company with whom we collaborate at this point of time in Israel called Bluebird, and we can carry that amount of weights with them. And finally, you can do the occupation management and refurbishment, and number of things. For refurbishment, for instance, there's this visual technology called augmented reality, virtual reality. I have seen examples where, customer does not go and see the facility, but you can put the customer into your computer and make sure that he gets the feel of precisely how the property looks like. So I'll sum it up by saying, no industry is today about technology, and so is your industry. And realtors have tremendous amount of opportunities to ensure that you could use technology for your benefit and your customers' benefit. Finally, let me conclude. A number of people ask me this question on saying, why did I become an entrepreneur? There's a fairly famous poem from Linda Ellis called The Dash. It actually came to my attention only in the last 10 years, but I used to talk about this much before that. So if you look at one's own life, you have on the tombstone finally, there are 2 dates which are written. Dates, both of them, which are not under our control. The day you come into this world, the day you disappear from this world. And in between those 2 dates, there's a dash in between. The dash is what is under your control. What you do during that period of dash is what your contribution to the society. If you start understanding the purpose of your life, you start saying, I need to contribute. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Thank you.